For this part of today's lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about education and health. You will see some overlap in talking about education as well as employment and unemployment as it relates to health and as it serves as a social determinant of health. This graphic, by the way, was taken from Virginia Commonwealth University, and I just thought it was a really good depiction of how, again, education increases your life expectancy and also some of your opportunities. So one question I always ask the undergraduates that I've taught previously in my Intro to Public Health class is, why is education important? I'll give you a second to think about that. Why is your education important? What do you learn in school? What do you learn in other ways that are forms of education that are not necessarily college or high school or elementary school? Well, education is so important that it's actually a goal for the Millennium Development Goal to try to ensure that universally, internationally, that all children have the ability to at least complete a primary education. So basically kindergarten to at least sixth grade. Think about what you learn in kindergarten, sixth grade. Beginning as you learn your ABCs, right? You learn the foundations for communicating with other people. You learn how to speak properly. You learn how to read and write, skill sets you use for the rest of your life. You learn numeracy skills, so some basic math that you need to use to understand your bills and finances, and even when to take what medication at what time, right? That translates into health literacy, the ability to take health information and actually put it into practice. You learn socialization skills. You learn, it's not okay to laugh at a funeral for the most part, right? Unless someone tells a joke and it's meant to be funny, right? But you also learn how to interact with people. You learn basic interpersonal communication skills that really do impact your opportunity and opportunities in the future. Employers tend to want people who are a bit more emotionally intelligent as opposed to someone who's incredibly smart but can't relate to other people. Over time, education becomes more and more specialized. You complete your high school degree, and in this case, like you are now, you're completing a college degree. This may set you up for your first career, or you may find that you need additional training, whether it be on-the-job education, or whether you need additional training in the form of additional schooling, right? Or maybe you would take some kind of external non-school-based training program to further your education. Nevertheless, this sets you up for your career. And again, we know that income is pretty important because it allows you cost of living expenses, it determines where you live, how you live, do you have a mode of transportation if you need it, and a whole other host of factors that greatly impact your health, right? With income really being one of the most prominent social determinants of health. So let's take a look at income based on your level of education and how that's changed over time. This shows you how, over time, the importance of an education has increased in terms of financial gains, where you find that millennials between the age of 25 to 32 who have at least a bachelor's degree on average earn about $45,500. Whereas if you have a 2-year degree, you've gone to a technical college, you've gotten some college, on average your income is around $30,000. And with a high school degree, a high school diploma or a GED, average, or in 2013, average earnings were closer to $28,000. One thing I do want to mention, something that I used to teach in a different class, was that on average, people need to take into consideration their monthly income and spend 1/3 or less of their income on living conditions and living situations, right? Whether that's 1/3 of your monthly income goes to rent, or 1/3 of your monthly income or less goes to mortgage. That in essence helps to put some money aside for savings, for emergencies, as well as to start thinking about retirement, right? All of these things impact your mental well-being, your social well-being, and your financial well-being, which impacts your health. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone in the red in your bank account or overspent, and your physical response might be a more rapid heartbeat, sweating, stress, right? And financial stress can be one of the leading causes of stressors that can lead to feelings of lack of control, lead to higher rates of anxiety and depression. So this particular table or graph, whatever you want to call it, comes from the same survey, the Pew Research Center survey, which shows that between the same individuals between the age of 25 to 32, based on their level of education, do they feel like they have the career that is the type of career, at least within the same track of what they had prepared for and what they wanted? Do they feel like they got enough education and training to get ahead in their job, to get the job, to get ahead of the ahead in the job? Are they satisfied with their job, and do they find their education very useful? And you find that the higher the level of education, the positive correlation with these more positive feeling like you're in the job that you want, that you've had enough training to get the job that you want, you get ahead, you're satisfied, and you feel like your education is useful. Um, so I also want to point out that your textbook is really interesting, especially this chapter 8 when they talk about work and employment, and they compare on a global scale, or they compare internationally different type of training and expectations, really comparing more North American Anglo careers and expectations as well as with other countries. And what they found is that more often in the United States and in Canada, there's this expectation that you are near perfect by the time that you go from your education into your job, that you are as more readily prepared as you could possibly be to obtain that job. And to get that job, you need to have had that education and training. Whereas other countries such as Germany and Japan will actually spend more time in training and educating their employees. And in the case that something changes with their job, if there's some kind of drastic shift in the way that the job is carried out, rather than laying off people that aren't academically prepared, they will spend extra time in training their employees to meet the new demands. I just thought that was a really interesting perspective of the role of the career or the role of the job in preparing their employees to be successful on the job. So this also published by Pew Research Center, which I've got to tell you is a really interesting website. If you get a chance, go online and look at Pew Research Center. Just Google Pew Research Center, go to pewresearch.org, and you can find a whole host of topics that gets the social pulse of what's going on globally as well as nationally. And you can get topics such as morality, religion, perspectives on politics, and a lot of really just deeply interesting day-to-day topics that affect all of us, right? This is, again, just information that was published back in 2014 from research collected in 2013. This particular slide shows the differences based on educational attainment with your annual earnings, if you're employed or unemployed, which, by the way, unemployed is linked with negative health and a whole host of negative health outcomes. We'll talk about that a little bit further in an upcoming recorded lecture. How many people are living in poverty, how many are married, and how many are living in their parents' home. So if you want a little bit more information about what's happening with college, I just thought I'd throw this in here just as something that's interesting, is the rising cost of tuition. Access to education is not equal for everyone, right? You can take out loans and you can find alternative methods for paying for college, but in this day and age, it's getting significantly more and more expensive to attend college. And why is that? According to this article, it's actually because of the amount of administrative spending, the amount of administration per student, and that's risen 61% in even since in recent years, as opposed to only 39%. So yeah, college is expensive, and equal access to college is not equal for all. So there are inequities in who has access to college, who has access to financial resources. So it's not necessarily equal for all, and your socioeconomic status of your parents, your socioeconomic status during childhood does impact the likelihood of whether or not it makes it easier or harder to go to college and what kind of debt to expect by the time that you're earning your first paycheck, that you're in your first career, what you have to pay back based on having taken out student loans. So again, we're framing education as a social determinant of health. And so for our next slides, we're going to talk about how education does impact health. So a lot of the information and the charts that are upcoming in these slides come from this document called Exploring the Social Determinants of Health. It was an issue brief that was published by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So education and life expectancy. What do you see from this chart? You see that beyond age 25, these are how many extra years you can be expected to live based on your education level, where you can have significantly longer life based on your education alone. So another thing that you find is that on average, there's 6.8, almost 7-year difference between the least educated and the most educated men, and roughly around 5 years longer life of women who are more educated as compared to women that are less educated. So this is this chart describes people who perceive their health as less than very good health. And you find that individuals with less educational attainment perceive their health and rated their health as less healthy than those who've graduated with a college degree. Now, again, if we were to think about how education would impact this particular perception of health, let's think about it. Okay, well, you're probably earning more income if you have a higher degree, right? If you at least have a college degree, which seems to be the new standard for employment. It's getting more and more difficult for people with a high school degree to a high school degree or less to enter employment, especially in this knowledge enterprise expectation of achieving education. And some of those jobs that do not require higher levels of education might be more physically demanding, might be more dangerous, might more often have less levels of control or perceived control on your day-to-day tasks and work. And so again, the higher your income and the higher your control within your job, the better you are in that social grading of health. Which I don't know if you guys remember learning about that in the second week of this class, but it's something that we talked about, that social grading of health, and that's something that's talked about in the film Unnatural Causes, Is Inequality Making Us Sick? Maternal education also directly impacts infant mortality, where you see that the lower the level of education, the higher infant mortality rates. There's a really interesting film also put on by Unnatural Causes called, I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's something that I use for my epigenetics class, where it talks about infant mortality rate in low birth weight babies. As the Bow Breaks is the name of the film. Thank you. Sorry about that. Didn't mean for that pause. As the Bow Breaks is something that was filmed by the same group of Unnatural Causes. It talks about educational attainment. It talks a little bit about career, but it also focuses on longitudinal stress experienced specifically by African American women and women of color, that over their lifespan, just the stress of being in minority status and perceived and real discrimination has this cumulative effect that not only affects the health of the mother, but also impacts birth outcomes. If you're interested in that topic, I'd highly recommend watching that film, again, As the Bow Breaks by Unnatural Causes. It's super interesting, and it describes why, or it tries to make the link of why women of color, but specifically African American women, have babies born as low birth weight babies, which puts a whole host of complications on the health of the child by not being fully developed at birth. Parental education also directly impacts children's health. In chapter 2 of your textbook, the book talked about cumulative poverty and how poverty and how the longer you've lived in poverty as a child and as an adult, the greater the impact on health. And what we find is that parental education and parental income directly impacts opportunity, health, ability to have fresh fruits and vegetables, ability to have resources that help reduce risk, ability to take time off, an ability to mitigate some of those stressors, right? That can lead to poor health outcomes. So again, education directly impacts not only the parents, but also their children's health. So this is a slide that comes from Virginia Commonwealth University's website, something that they have called Why Education Matters to Health. I'm going to show you a quick video in an upcoming slide about how this is linked. Okay, let's see if this is going to play. This is not playing. Oh, yep, there it is.
It comes as no surprise that some Americans are healthier than others. But did you know that your years of education can predict how long and how well you will live? That's even more true today than it has ever been. Over the last few decades, the life expectancy gap between more educated and less educated Americans has widened. Things are changing. Education matters to health more than it did in the past. And this is true not just for how long we live, but how healthy we live. Disease rates are linked to education. Americans who don't stay in school, now more than ever before, are more likely to have obesity, diabetes, heart conditions, and other diseases.
Health disparities disproportionately impact minorities and the poor, but differences in life expectancy by education affect everyone. In fact, although most Americans have enjoyed increases in life expectancy for more than a century, an alarming trend has recently emerged. Life expectancy has actually been decreasing for certain groups with less education. As an example, white women without a high school diploma are now living shorter lives than they did in 1990.
There are many reasons that education matters so greatly to health. More education leads to better paying jobs, with benefits like health insurance. But that alone doesn't explain the connection between education and better health. More education and higher earnings means better access to healthy food and safer homes. It means neighborhoods with good schools, near jobs and transportation, all linked to health. In addition, children who grow up in struggling, stressful homes or neighborhoods pay a double price. The living conditions disturb their education, but the stress can also cause them to take up unhealthy or risky behaviors, such as smoking or violence, which can affect their health for a lifetime. Not only is education affecting our health, it's also affecting our economy and ability to compete globally. Today's high-earning jobs require a more educated workforce. Consider this. 60% of new jobs in the 21st century will require skills that only 20% of the workforce has, according to the Department of Education. The bottom line is that education matters more now than ever. As policymakers struggle to balance budgets in challenging fiscal times, education funding is often the first to get cut. At the VCU Center on Society and Health, our research is designed to help policymakers and stakeholders connect the dots between community conditions, including where we live, learn, work, and play, and our health. Learn more about our research at societyhealth.vcu.edu.